Hey, this is Matt once again. What about the end of the video? There's another paid request. It's time for Gia. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting pretty much any type of reviews, topics, reactions, re-reviews, what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And Gia wanted to request another episode of the 2003 Ninja Turtles cartoon. This one called Road in the House Part 1. Now, I've said before, I'll say it again, I'm a big fan of the 2003 Ninja Turtles cartoon. This was a show that I found really when it was coming out, because I remember I was in San Marcos at the time, San Marcos, Texas, and still trying to get my legs running around there. Got a job at a Target at that point, stocking shelves and stuff, and on TV there's this advertised that there's a new Ninja Turtles cartoon coming out. I'm like, what? They're making a new one? Cool. Because by that point the Ninja Turtles were kind of dead for a long while. I mean, other than the Saban Power Rangers type live action show, the Next Mutation, which was in the late 90s, there really wasn't anything coming out for the Ninja Turtles. The last movie was in 1993. The cartoon, the 80s cartoon, had ended for quite a few years. Maybe some comic books were out, but not a whole lot. And then Peter Laird, one of the two creators of the Ninja Turtles, Kevin Eastman sold his portion to go run the Heavy Metal magazine. So Peter Laird now had full control, and with 4Kids TV and a few other companies, they did this show where it was going to be a bit more like the comics, but at the same time still being their own thing. It's still a kid's show, but it's going to be a little bit more serious at times, a little bit more mature at times, a little bit more, definitely more action driven. It's still a kid's show, it's still silly points to it, but definitely not as much as the 80s cartoon. The Turtles would use their weapons more. There's more, again, serious moments, and the villains felt a bit more dangerous, and there's a lot of arcs to it. There's a lot of times where episodes would get 3-part episode or a 4-part episode or a 5-part episode, and this was one of them. I think it was, I forget if it was 2 or 3 parts. And Road in the House Part 1, I mean, it's a middle of the road episode. It's not really a standout of any sort. It starts off with telling a bit about Karai, a background of who Karai was, which makes sense because a lot of people wouldn't know who she was because she was big in the comic books of the Turtles, but she wasn't in the 80s cartoon, she wasn't in the movies. She was the adopted daughter of the Shredder. She's the one that when Shredder was gone, she kind of ran the Foot Clan. Her and Leonardo had sort of this, they kind of respect each other type of quality. It showcases how, at the beginning of this, Karai has to make a choice. She's very much honor-bound compared to the Shredder, but is she going to follow her father, or is she going to follow her honor code? Which is she going to follow? And when I say things were a bit more serious, I mean, like Basher Stockman, because he would fail from time to time, each time you saw him, he would have another wound. Either he'd be missing an eye, or he'd be missing his legs. Here, he'd have been just a brain and an eyeball in a jar. And your mind kind of fills in the blanks as to how he became just that. And even Shredder goes, "Oh, you lost weight." So the plot of the episode is that Stockman is helping the Shredder, and there's this technology, foot mech technology, And there's like one that's going to look like the president, and one look like another. There's about 9 of them. One of them looks like Splinter. And they send them off to attack the turtles. Meanwhile, the Ninja Turtles are just having fun in the sewers. They find this Triceraton. This, I mean, the name says it all. It's looks like a Triceratops, but it's a biped, walking, talking. It was from this whole scheme of episodes earlier in the show, which was also based on the comic books, where the turtles were able to get into space and they meet these aliens, and there's this military force. Some were slaves that were fighting this military force. There's some good guys, some bad guys, but there was these Triceratops looking aliens called the Triceratons. Well, this one was left behind, and because it can't breathe the air, it's delusional and doesn't think straight. The air is affecting his brain, so he thinks these turtles are his commanding officers, so he'll listen to what they'll say. And it shows, Donatello, despite this, wants to help, and even Raphael's like, well, wait a minute, this guy's going to notice who we are, and Don's like, well, we can't let him suffer. So it shows their good nature, and he makes it so the guy can breathe easier. But I guess his brain is still altered, so he still thinks it's they're his commanding officer, so he follows them. And probably the big part of this episode is you have the Splinter. I thought they could have done a lot more with faking the turtles out, because they meet this Splinter who's a mech, and then he kind of acts like he's sick, and they try to help him. But very, very quickly, the real Splinter shows up. I thought, wow, they didn't really pump up any type of suspense or any type of, are they going to figure out this is the fake Splinter? How long they don't know this is the real Splinter? They didn't really milk that for much of anything. I thought that was kind of a missed opportunity. Because again, as soon as they find it, there's the real Splinter, and they realize, wait, there's 2 of them, and this mech Splinter fights the turtles, messing them up. They finally get the Triceraton to go and destroy the mech Splinter. Now, I think it would have been kind of cool and interesting if the turtles had to destroy this version of their master, and maybe that would kind of affect them later. Like maybe one of them, maybe Raphael, maybe others, like I'm a Raphael guy, so of course I would put him in the forefront, because I always do, because that's what we do with our favorite characters a lot of times. They know it's a mech, and have Raphael like stab Splinter, but you're stabbing a robot, so there's no blood or anything. That could get away with the what's the version of MPA on TV? I'm trying to remember. But you get away with it because it's just a robot. But Splinter's still Raphael's still seeing a sigh in his father's face, and he knows that his dad, but that could maybe mess him up, and maybe that could also follow through with his anger issues, and maybe like the foot mech is beating up Mikey, Raph gets in a rage and fights it and stabs it, and looks in Splinter, and like, is this Splinter still trying to act like Splinter? Maybe he's trying to fake him out, trying to beg for his life. They wouldn't do that, but I'm just saying that could lead to some really interesting drama, and it's a kid's show, it's not going to do that, but I'm just saying that's what I would like in the future, to have a show where that could happen. And my neighbors' roosters feel the same way. They agree with my notion. For something like that to happen, people go, what do you want for the future of the Turtles? I want a show where that scenario I mentioned could happen, and maybe does happen. That's what I want. Because at the same time, these are characters, 4 distinct personalities, that you really ramp up drama, as well as action, as well as suspense. And people laugh when I say that, but why is it okay for a guy in a bat suit to do this, because it's a fucking bat suit, or a guy having a shield and calling himself Captain America, or a guy calling himself Iron Man, or a guy going green and becoming a Hulk. If you talk about this with them, no one snickers. But with this, they go, just go eat some Snickers and shut up. I'm like, no, it depends on how you do it and how you write it, and for someone to take the chance and honestly the balls to go in that direction. Because yeah, like everything, if you do it poorly, you'll fall flat on your face. But if you do it the right way, I think you get a lot of special stuff, but special material. But that's just me. But again, it's still a kid show at the end of the day, so you know they destroy it, or the Triceraton destroys it. Splinter's pissed, going, I'm not going to stand by when they use my likeness to attack my family. And Splinter's pissed. So they find out there's something going on with the docks. Raph, Leo, and Splinter, they go off, being stealthy. They're each knocking out some Foot Clan members. They get in. Donatello's going to rid the boat to be sunk. Mighty's with the Triceraton. They're fighting on the outside, and the others are getting ready to fight on the inside. And that's where the episode ends, and then the next episode is fighting. I know, and I don't know, I think there's maybe just a part 2. The Triceraton actually sacrifices his life. He thinks for his duty, for his, I was going to say his country, but for his race, his planet, his honor-bound code. But he actually saves his commanding officers and sacrifices himself, which was a note on the comic books. Does that happen in the comic books? And you know, there are characters that do die. It's not often, but it can happen. And that's what makes this show at least a bit more serious compared to some of the other iterations of these characters. And that's what I mean, I think this was a good step in the right direction for a show. So I would want the next direction, the next step, to go even further in that direction. And some of the stuff I mentioned described, and instead they went backwards. Instead they said, you know what, the 2012 cartoon, I want that to be like the 80s cartoon. And granted, to be fair, there are times where characters do die on that episode, like Splinter dies. So I will give credit to that. But also like the comedy and other aspects, and the 50 times they referenced and mentioned the 80s cartoon. It's like, you'll get the 80s cartoon's dick out of your mouth, man. But yeah, that's what this happens. And like I said, the episode is kind of a meh, you know, time waster. I wouldn't put it in my favorite episode list of the season. You know, it served its purpose. It was decently paced. It wasn't boring. I love these characters. I love the voice acting. I really do like the animation. The fight with the mech Splinter is, you know, there. It's not memorable, to be fair, though. It's just a bit of build-up for the action in the second part. And that's kind of what they did a lot, is that they will build up in 1 or 2 parts so that you could have an episode where it's just like 20 minutes of action. Like when they fought Shredder and they're going up the tower, the Foot Clan tower, and you got like Raphael getting this flying motorcycle and jumping from one to the other, beating up people, and them fighting Shredder and fighting all these other guys and Foot Clan members, and you can have all that action because you've done the build-up in the past couple episodes. So it is what it is. I think there's stuff they could have done to make it more interesting. So it's a time waster. It's there. It's nothing that made me mad or angry, but it's not like a favorite episode. So with that said, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.